I work in high-risk environments every day. I run heavy equipment, I'm underneath trucks, I'm rebuilding motors, got stuff hanging over my head. I fly through the air on dirt bikes and snowmobiles and everything else, right? And I've crashed lots of times, and I've been in the hospital and broken this and broken that. And the doctors always put me back together. You always just in the back of your head kind of thought, I'm invincible, I can live with the fact that if I crash on my bike and break my arm, I chose to get on the bike and fly through the air, and I fell and broke my arm. I didn't choose this. So I was first diagnosed officially in June of 2022. Seeing different doctors, different specialists, finally got a biopsy, came back that it was melanoma. And it was a very rare form of melanoma. Meeting with my oncologist surgeon, my ENT, my plastics team. The game plan at first was to cut it all out. So in August of that year, I had the surgery. So that's when they removed the growth on my face and in my jaw and rebuilt it with portions of my arm, and then rebuilt my arm with parts of my leg. And then I was told in October that they got it all. You're on top of the world essentially, right? Like really thinking that you've got this thing beat. We actually had a big cancer party here in November. We called it the Fuck Cancer Party. We donated $10,000 to Princess Margaret and Toronto General. Thinking, okay, I can help the next person, Well, it turns out the next person was me again. At that point, they basically said, we're all out of options besides redoing the same surgery, going even more in depth. So they wanted to shave my jawbone, take my lower teeth, and basically remove the front of my face and try to rebuild it. So I couldn't put myself back through it. There had to be a better way.
How can this be happening to my kid? And he had everything to live for. And all of a sudden it was just possibly going to be the end of it all. And then of course, when we got the second diagnosis, it was just like, wow, what do we do now?
Yeah, it just pushed me into research mode. Toronto wasn't going to have another answer for us. I got to go find another one.
Whatever I could do to try to fix it, we were looking at. So
ultimately, we ended up looking in Mexico. I was looking in other locations in Tijuana that did the dendritic cell. And then when I started using that terminology, that's when Immunocine came up.
You're looking for the science behind it, right? Okay, and what proof do you have that yours works? Immunocine and their double loading technology and that they're FDA trials and they're having really good success with those trials. Holy shit, we found something. A light at the end of the tunnel in a way. A huge reason I ended up going to Immunocine was Brock. Brock also had melanoma, worse off than I was. Went through it, made it through, crushed it. At the time, Brock took the time out of his day to call me and sort of answer those questions that you can't answer as a doctor. You can't tell somebody how they're gonna feel unless you've been there. With the other centers, basically if you wrote them the check, you were in. Well, when we're talking to Immunocine, the money was the last thing they even asked about, right? They want to know about me, my condition, finding out just how hard it is to get accepted into Immunocine, right? Because they don't want to take your money.
We were actually in Toronto General sitting in Emerge when we found out that he got accepted, and we just left. Just left after sitting for 5 hours waiting for a doctor to come see us.
I had a really bad infection in the graft site as well. So the graft site was dying when I got to Mexico, and even though that was outside of the scope for the team in Mexico, they dealt with it right away. And within a couple weeks of being in Mexico, was gone. I was better. The infection was completely gone. And the level of care and like how personal that care was, not just be a number or whatever, right? You know, like you were you. I actually made videos for my kids on my phone, being worried that I wasn't going to see my daughter go to school, let alone graduate. You do them because you're scared. You know, you're scared that I'm like, you're not going to be there for these moments in their life, right? And the thought of me not being here was really tough. The days that I made those videos were probably the darkest days of my life. And the day that I deleted them was probably the best day of my life. I was done treatment June 1st, came home the day after, saw my oncologist at Princess Margaret, and she saw me right before I went to Mexico. And then I come back and I'm light years better. And she says, wait right here. And 2 minutes later, the entire oncology department was in this little tiny room. It was like an 8x8 cell, you know, and they're all just in awe of how this treatment has been working. You could almost watch it in the mirror shrinking. Like it was unreal how fast it shrank. When I got a clean biopsy, that was the day I knew. When I left Immunocine, we were talking a year to 18 months, you know, and that was kind of like the timeline we were looking at for it to all go away, right? And then for it to be gone and getting clean scans like 4 months after treatment was just mind blowing, you know, like I'm basically 11 months out of treatment now, and I've had 2 clean scans and a clean biopsy. So, you know, the proof is in the pudding, like this stuff works.
So it was a fairly easy transition back to life because most of his quality of life issues were gone. Well, Kevin just went back to work, like nothing happened, ignored all of the doctors.
To be honest, I could do more now than I could do before. And I think it's changed my outlook on life, and it's changed the outlook on my body and my health, and, you know, not taking that kind of stuff for granted, right? Like I was given a second chance, so I'm not gonna waste it.
He's definitely a better father, he's a better husband, he's a better boss. So in some ways, it's possibly the best thing that happened to him and the worst thing. He's in better physical condition than in the 10 years that I've met him.
I have priorities, man. And like my priorities changed big time through this whole ordeal. You know, what really matters. Because at the end of the day, nobody's gonna remember me for working 14 hours a day in an excavator dig in a basement, you know? But my kids are gonna remember me pushing them on the swings, or riding around the farm on their dirt bikes, or teaching them how to swim, or just all those things, you know? I would like to think that, you know, when they're older and they kind of understand what happened and what I went through, to know that you don't give up, you know? Don't take no as an answer.